Poland's history is a symphony of defiance, a nation carved by suffering yet unwilling to break. But even the most resilient heart can bleed, and through the corridors of time, Poland has faced moments so dark they seem to stretch beyond human endurance. These are not mere episodes of hardship, they are wounds etched into the national soul, where the echoes of loss still drift through the cold winds of memory. There was a time when Poland stood tall, a kingdom proud and expansive, its borders brushing the Baltic's salt air and stretching toward the black forests of the Carpathians. Yet, as the 18th century waned, the vultures of Europe circled. The partitions, cold, calculated dissections, began to unravel a nation that had stood for over 8 centuries. In 3 cruel acts between 1772 and 1795, Poland was devoured by its rapacious neighbors, Russia, Prussia, and Austria. A kingdom that had once sheltered diversity and liberty vanished from the maps. No declaration of war, no grand battle, just the quiet signing of documents by distant monarchs, as though a nation's soul could be erased by ink and ambition. For 123 years, Poland was a ghost, a name whispered in secret by those who refused to forget. But erasure breeds rebellion, and Poland's heart refused to be silenced. The 19th century swelled with uprisings, hopeful, desperate, doomed. The November Uprising of 1830, a cry against Russian chains, flickered like a candle against the storm and was snuffed out beneath the boots of imperial might. The January Uprising of 1863 followed, an act of pure defiance. But again, the price was blood. Villages burned, thousands were exiled to the frost-bitten wastelands of Siberia, and still, the world turned away. These were not mere military failures, they were a kind of crucifixion, where a nation's faith in freedom bore the nails of empire's cruelty. When independence was finally reclaimed in 1918, it came as if torn from the jaws of fate. But respite was fleeting. 2 decades later, the shadow of totalitarianism darkened the horizon. In September 1939, the skies above Poland filled with the shriek of German bombers as the Wehrmacht rolled across the western border. From the east came the Red Army, cold and unyielding like a tide of iron. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a secret handshake between 2 tyrants, had sealed Poland's fate. Divided once again, Poland became a battlefield where conscience and cruelty collided. What followed defies language's limits. The occupation was no mere military conquest, it was an attempt to annihilate identity itself. Warsaw's streets echoed with the tramp of jackboots. The intellectual elite were executed in forests. The Jewish population, which had once flourished, was herded into ghettos where hunger gnawed at their dignity. Auschwitz, its very name an abyss, became the world's darkest mirror, where over 1 million lives were consumed by industrialized death. And yet, even in the face of such horror, the Polish spirit fought. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising of 1943, a flash of defiance against impossible odds, burned brightly before the inevitable collapse. A year later, Warsaw rose again, and for 63 defiant days, the city bled in the Warsaw Uprising of 1944. When the guns fell silent, Warsaw was rubble, and its people lay beneath the stones. Peace, when it came, was no liberation. The end of the Second World War did not restore true freedom. Instead, Poland fell behind the Iron Curtain, a puppet state under Soviet control. The promises of Yalta became a bitter betrayal. Political purges swept through the land, the Catholic Church was hounded, and secret police whispered fear into every shadow. For decades, Poles lived under the weight of censorship and oppression, their dreams of sovereignty bound in the chains of Moscow's cold hand. Yet, perhaps the cruelest moment was not written by foreign invaders, but by time itself, the Katyn Massacre, a wound hidden beneath layers of lies. In 1940, thousands of Polish officers, scholars, and leaders were marched into the Katyn forest by Soviet hands. There, in the silence of the trees, they were shot. 22,000 lives extinguished. For half a century, truth was smothered beneath a blanket of denial, a crime unspoken but never forgotten. Even when the lie was exposed, the ache remained, a wound unhealed. But what is Poland if not defiance against despair? Each of these darkest hours was met not with surrender, but with the stubborn refusal to die. From the shipyards of Gdansk in 1980 came Solidarity, a movement born of workers' dignity and led by a simple electrician, Lech Wałęsa. Against the monolithic Soviet machine, Poland's workers raised their voices, and in time, those voices shattered the walls of empire. These are the worst moments in Poland's history, not mere dates or distant tragedies, but scars that pulse beneath the surface of the nation's heart. Yet in every shadow chapter, there burns a truth. Poland endures. It endures not because its suffering was less, but because its spirit could not be broken. Out of darkness, it rises again and again, undaunted, unyielding, and unforgotten. Dziękuję. Like and subscribe, or your life will consist of a series of disasters.